In December 1987, a little-known game developed by Capcom made its way onto Japanese and American markets. 25 years later, Mega Man is one of the most celebrated franchises in video gaming history. Today, on Downloadable Content, we'll be going over the 25 years and all the games that Mega Man has been in there. All 300 of them. Just kidding. We'll only cover the majors. That's still going to take a long time. This is Downloadable Content. Let's go.
And welcome to Downloadable Content. I am Brian, and with me on this episode we have Nick.
Hey everyone.
And Ron.
Hi guys.
Back from very little sleep. That's because Ron was playing Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter all day. And all night.
Gotta test your might somehow.
Well, yes, that's what you have to do. But yes, that intro was read courtesy of Nick. It is our Mega Man episode. And so, this is a special episode because full disclosure, I have not touched the Mega Man series. I think my Mega Man experience amounts to, 5 minutes of the first level of the first game.
And I think that's because I forced you to do it.
Possibly. I don't know how that came about. So my knowledge of the series is nil. However, I do recognize the fact that Mega Man is a very classic franchise. It's loved by many, many gamers. And so I still wanted to devote an episode to Mega Man. So, basically what you guys are going to hear, you're going to hear Nick and Ron talking about Mega Man. I'm going to remain largely out of it. I'll cut in whenever, I feel it's appropriate. But by and large, you're going to get Nick and Ron for this episode. So without further ado, I will step aside, and I will let you two take it away. Away you go.
Thanks a lot, Brian. So, I'll start with my experience in Mega Man, how it all came about. My experience started way back in the year 1995 was when I first got my hands on a Mega Man game. It was the Mega Man 7 for the Super Nintendo. And I always heard of the Mega Man series growing up as a kid, but it wasn't. But this was the first time I ever got my hands to actually start playing it, and it just struck a very weird chord with me of just what do you mean I can just choose who I get to fight? What do you mean there's no order? It was just completely unlike anything I ever played, and I think that ultimately has been the charm, which has been running for all these games now, has just been the freedom to pick.
Well, I mean, the type of gameplay mechanic you're describing, I can think of one game that fits that also. Have you ever played Gunstar Heroes?
I have heard of it. I have seen runs of it, but I have never personally played it.
It's a lot of fun. It sort of has that same sort of feel to it as well. It's I believe it was a Genesis game, and it is available on the Virtual Console. It's quite a lot of fun.
There is also a advanced version on the Game Boy Advance. I know there's a copy of that floating around.
But 1995, that means I was 10, and
yeah, I was 10.
10, so already the series had come quite a bit.
Yeah, well, you have to figure, well, it was started in 1987, And between, just 8 short years, we have, 7 main Mega Man games, not to mention Mega Man, at the time Mega Man X was also out. So, you have 8 major titles in the series to that point, averaging once a year.
Well, and at that point, I mean, since you jumped in pretty late in the series chronology, what drew you to this game and caused you to play the others?
I think it was because I had always heard of the series, but had never played them. So when I saw how good 7 was and how much fun I was having, trying to figure out the order and how the weapons worked and all that, to go back to the previous Mega Man games and play them and beat them, to just see how it all came about. How did we lead to 7?
Now, I don't know this for sure, but are all the games connected by a plot, or they're all standalone game?
They're, at least for the class, well, there's several series. There's Classic, X, Zero, ZX, EXE, Star Force. There's a whole bunch of them, but they're all connected in some form or another. Like, the Classic series has its own plot line. It's somewhat connected to the X series. The X series has its own storyline. The X series is somewhat connected to the Zero series. Well, actually, directly connected to the Zero series. That has its own plot line. So in terms of a plot, there is something there, but this is an old school video game. So there really wasn't much one to begin with at all.
Well, I kind of had that same sort of draw with like Final Fantasy. Like my first Final Fantasy game was Final Fantasy VII, and I was curious to figure out and see how the previous 6 had played out. So I can understand, the draw there, the curiosity.
Right. Also what drew me in at the time was right about that time, maybe a couple years prior, there was the Mega Man cartoon series, and Saturday mornings I would get up and that would be one of the shows I watched. So I learned about it that way too, and that also drew my interest.
I didn't know there was a Mega Man cartoon. I knew about the Sonic Saturday morning cartoon, but I didn't know.
You should YouTube it sometime. There's tons of videos on it, and I know there's even a couple. What was the name of the band? I want to say it was the Megas. Megas or the Proto Men, I forget which, that did a cover of the title song of the cartoon.
The Proto Men would make more sense, but be that as it may. Well, since we're talking about the series and what drew you in, you might as well start with the first game.
Absolutely. Mega Man 1, December 1987. I know in Japan it was released December 17th. It hit the US not too long afterwards. The first game in the series, and right away, this game was not expected to sell that well. But despite it not grabbing hit numbers, but it's still very well received for its time. And, of course, having that new revolutionary system of you can pick which robot master you got to fight. For the first game, there was only 6 robot masters, as they were called. Cutman, Gutsman, Electman, Fireman, Iceman, and Bombman. And once you defeated these robot masters, you got their weapon or power, and you could use it against the next boss, and that's basically been in every single Mega Man game ever.
Yeah, I do remember that. I mean, I also remember the fact that weren't the bosses weak against a specific power, so there was a bit of strategy involved. There's always this wheel of
kind of like a very big game of rock paper scissors. So like how I would always start a Mega Man 1 run is I would start with Bomb Man, Gutsman was weak to Bombman's weapon. I would go then to him. Cutman lost to Gutsman's weapon. So go after Cutman, then beat Electman, then take out Iceman, and then take out Fireman. And so that's how I always did. I don't know if anyone, how anyone else did it, but that's how I always did it. And I know a lot of people start with Cutman because, at the time, people didn't understand that you could pick your own stage. So people just hit the start button not knowing, what to get into, and you automatically start at Cutman's stage. The cursor is automatically set to that stage. So that's what a lot of people remember as for starting it out. And Cutman's music, which I think is one of the standing points of the entire Mega Man series, the music is just so catchy, so upbeat, and really fits the stage's environment.
And music does have a lot to do with it. I have heard some of the Mega Man music, and it is one of the notable things about the series.
I think it's one of the big selling points, to be honest with you. Since the gameplay is pretty much the same when you move from when you move from game to game, so what really helps you when making these Mega Man games is two things stand out in my mind: the weapons you get and the music in the stage. And I think that's what keeps me playing each and every title.
Well, I mean, the music itself has even been featured in video game concerts. It's that memorable.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, it's one of the biggest draws.
And so I would assume that, the type of platforming gameplay has been pretty constant, I get the impression.
At
least in the classic series.
A classic series, the X series as well. For most of the series has been pretty standard, especially in the classic series. It's pretty much the same game all the way through, and I like that whole "don't fix what's not broke." It was a very systematic approach. Everyone really enjoyed it. And I'll talk about more of that later when, let's get into it. Up to Mega Man 2, released the next year, December 24th, 1988. The best-selling game of all at 1.5 million copies sold. This time it went from 6 Robot Masters to 8 Robot Masters, and it was 8 Robot Masters ever since.
Nintendo loves that number 8 for everything.
Well, this is Capcom.
Well, I know it was Capcom who made Mega Man, but 8 Robot Masters. Then the only thing I can think of, Pokemon with the 8 gym leaders. What is so magical about the number 8? Anyway, keep going.
I probably would draw that from Mario just to finish that thought. What else was there? There were well, they had this in the first game, but there were more methods of transportation. Oh, excuse me. Like in the first game, in Electman stage, you found this magnet beam, which you can use to make some makeshift platforms. In Mega Man 2, they kind of expanded on that by making 3 different transportation items that Dr. Light, the Mega Man's creator, made. Like item 1 made like the stationary platform that slowly rode up. Item 2 was like a rocket that you used to speed across, and item 3 was a wall climber that can help you get hard to reach areas. Also, the E-tanks were introduced in Mega Man 2 that refilled your energy when you were low. You could just go to your menu, hit the button, and you didn't have to lose a life because you were being stupid. Until you fall on the spikes.
Oh yes, the dreaded spikes. Another classic staple of the old games. Spikes for everything. Spikes and pits.
Well, the spikes are instant kill in Mega Man games, and Wily would love to have the disappearing blocks over the bed of spikes. Which is also a staple of the series, is to have those disappearing, reappearing blocks. Like disappearing, reappearing ink? No, that's a movie.
Yeah, no, that's something else altogether. You said that this was the best. This is the best-selling game of the series?
This is the best-selling game of the series at 1.5 million copies. No other Mega Man game in any of the series has come close, has made that mark. The closest it did was, I believe, Mega Man 3.
All right.
Oh, something else of note, at least for Mega Man 1 and Mega Man 2, because this is something I found that was very interesting. Mega Man 1 was programmed on only 1 megabit of memory. Not megabyte, megabit.
Yeah, that's tiny.
To fit all that into a game like that, and to have music like that, and to have mechanics like that, and to have the weapons, that is truly extraordinary.
Yes, and was Mega Man was at least for a while, wasn't that a Nintendo exclusive?
Well, at the days of the NES, there was really nothing else to compare it with. So,
oh yes.
Until Mega Man 8, you could only find it on Nintendo.
Oh, all right.
But I'll get into that a little bit.
Oh, yes.
Mega Man 3 was up next in September 28th, 1990. Like I said, there was over 1 million sold of this game, and it introduced a lot of other mechanics. A lot of people like to put this up as an argument of, this is the best Mega Man of all, not Mega Man 2. Because of everything else they introduced. Instead of the items that we had in Mega Man 2, they now put it all into a robot companion called Rush, the dog.
Oh, I remember Rush. I mean, I remember seeing merchandise with Rush.
He came in Mega Man 3, he was equipped with the Rush coil, that was standard. When you defeated one Robot Master, I believe it was Needle Man, you got Rush Jet, and when you defeated Shadow Man, fuck Shadow Man, you got Rush Marine, which let you traverse underwater safely. Let's see, you could also now slide in the game. That was a new mechanic back in the day. You press down and the jump button and you can slide underneath areas. And that was very helpful against the fights against Breakman or Proto Man. Mega Man's brother, that was also his first appearance in the series. And then I personally think that Mega Man 3 is probably the hardest in the series, because not only did you have to defeat the 8 Robot Masters, you then had to re-defeat all the Robot Masters from Mega Man 2.
Which is difficult because of the fact that you don't know what the Mega Man 2 robots are weak to with the Mega Man 3 boss weapons. So you're kind of left either experimenting, or in certain cases, or for people who are feeling particularly masochistic, beating them with just the Mega Man Buster.
Nah, I'll rather experiment with weaponry. I did know that Airman's weapon was weak to Spark Shot from Sparkman. I know Heat Man was weak to that freaking Top Spin. That was the most suicidal weapon ever. Who thought that was a great idea?
Brian, to explain what the Top Spin is, there's a boss in the game called Top Man who is shaped like a top and spins around, and when he collides into you, he does damage to you. When you get his weapon ability, you spin around like a top as well. The problem is, when you run into someone, you take damage.
What the hell sort of fun is that?
Yeah, so pretty much this is a useless skill, only used for like one boss, because if you don't, and even then it's like it's a race.
Okay, basically this is why I think Shadow Man is maybe the hardest Robot Master of the entire series, is because he is weak to Top Spin, and if you whiff, your Top Spin meter is gone, and you have no chance of beating him. Shadow Man is just so freaking hard. It takes crackerjack timing to beat. And then you gotta beat Heat Man with Top Spin. That's not fun either. And then the final boss is weak to Top Spin. It's like, come on!
Well, that's an NES boss for you.
Yeah,
to be fair, Ethan is not nearly as hard as Shadow Man, and you can beat the final boss as the Buster without too much difficulty.
Yeah, I mean, it's doable. It's doable.
I just want to briefly mention too, because I didn't have the opportunity to. In Mega Man 2, they introduced what was probably the most broken weapon upgrade. The
metal blades.
Buzzsaw, the metal blades.
Those were the single most abusive weapon. A weapon so abusive, the gameplay actually improved when you got it. Metal Man was a easy boss. You could beat him with the Mega Buster. And then you got Metal Blade, which pretty much annihilated anything. It was good against like 3 different robot masters. You got
including Metal Man himself.
Yeah, he dies to 1 Metal Blade. He dies to his own weapon. And you got a boatload of them. Like 55, I think, altogether. 55 shots. Something like that. It's ridiculous.
You don't pick them back up. Because I think they go out a fair distance and then return to you. And if you pick it up...
That's Quickman's weapon. That's Quick Boomerang.
But still, like, the fact that you can get, like, 50 or some odd shots... and enemies are semi-proficient in dropping weapon recharge energy. You could go. People will do runs, and like the first thing they do is beat Metal Man, and then just play the rest of the game with the Metal Blades.
Another thing to note is that you could fire them in all 8 of the cardinal directions,
which you can't do with Buster.
I mean, you could just hit from any angle, any distance. It was just. It's such a horribly broken weapon, but it was so much fun to use. Just even grabbing the little small energy caplets to refill the weapon refilled like 8 shots.
So, getting back to 3, they balanced the weapons a bit. Also, this is like there's always a little bit of a plot going. Mega Man 1 takes place in the year 19XX.
Yes, I know, and Homestar Runner parodies that.
And
20XD6.
Yeah, and so like pretty much like the majority of the other Mega Man 2 through 8 take place in that same time frame. But the plot really wasn't expounded upon a lot. Really, I mean, this 3 is where we see some more plot introduced of Proto Man and figuring out where he came from.
Right. And they were always very loose in the plot. I mean, yeah, they were somewhat interconnected, and I heard the Japanese versions of the games go into it a little bit more. But again, it was very, very loose. But past Mega Man 3 is Mega Man 4, December 6, 1991. We got a new villain in Dr. Cossack.
Oh, he's Dr. Russian. Okay, I'm done.
So he is Russian, but that's about it.
We got a few new things. A new partner, the Eddie, the Flip Top. He would give items throughout the course of the level. Sometimes it would be something awesome like 1-ups. Sometimes it was absolutely useless like energy when you're at max health. Thanks, Eddie.
This is also the introduction of the chargeable Mega Buster.
Yep, that was new.
That's new.
I think it was also the game with the most tools in Mega Man. I mean, not only did you have, Rush Marine, Rush Coil, Rush Jet, you also found within 2 specific levels, Pharaoh Man and Dive Man, respectively, you found Balloon, which acted kind of like Item 1 in Mega Man 2, and the Wire, which you could kind of grapple up towards the ceiling, almost Batman style, to hit high points. And while they weren't that excessively overpowered, it was just a different means of getting around, and we never saw that again in the Mega Man series.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of other things that are memorable. Oh, just as usual, it's not that once you beat get to Dr. Kosak's castle and beat him, ends up being that he's just being manipulated by Wily, and so then after being Kosak, he has to go and defeat Wily again.
This is the first of the Mega Man trilogy of a trilogy fans like to call the false villain trilogy, where you would go through one area only to find out that it's actually Wily, and then you have to go through Wily's castle again. So you go through 2 castles, which extended the gameplay quite a bit, but I mean, of course it's Wily.
Yeah.
It's always Wily.
Yeah, it's pretty much for Mega Man, you always assume it's Wily until proven otherwise. Again, and unfortunately, like right around here, while they're introducing they're introducing new things with the Buster Shot, Flip Top Eddie. Like, really, this is where you're starting seeing the gameplay kind of wane a little bit. It's the same tried and true formula.
You'll see this in some of the later games. This was I mean, Mega Man 4 was still well received, but you could kind of tell that this was this was like the last good Mega Man for a while, that it was really going to start to get stale.
Well, wasn't the Super Nintendo out by the... Yeah, Super Nintendo was out by this point.
Super Nintendo has been out by now for a while. And Capcom...
1991, it wasn't out very long.
Yeah, Mega Man 4 was probably made before Capcom could, quote-unquote, reliably build a Mega Man game on it. But for Mega Man 5, which we'll go to next, that's 1992, December 4th. I mean, Super Nintendo's been out for a year, and Capcom still hasn't said a word one way or the other about trying to move Mega Man over to that. So there's a little bit of staleness in the graphics. Now there's the Super NES out there, but the game's still not. It's still the core gameplay is still there. We're led to believe Proto Man is the bad guy, based on the intro cutscene, him releasing Robot Masters and challenging Mega Man to find him and fight him. But it ends up being that it's actually just Wily, so that's not too surprising.
Again, it's always Wily.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mega Man 5, what did we see? We saw the introduction of Beat, the bird, which no one liked.
Mainly because of the fact that to get Beat, you had to collect 8 medals from each stage, and once you beat the stage, you don't really want to go back and try and beat it again just to get this dumb power-up. And
it had its uses. It could kill some unkillable enemies, but other weapon drives could do it too, so it really wasn't that necessary.
The only time Beat was useful was, I think, in one of Dr. Wily's bosses in his castle. Maybe even Dr. Wily himself. He'd bring a bird out and he pecks at his face and, kills him in a couple hits.
Yeah, it was very powerful, but yeah, you had to collect all 8 emblems to spell Mega Man 5, and that could get a little tedious. Was I one of the only people who actually went out of my way to grab those?
No, I got them too, just because I didn't know what... When I first played Mega Man 5, I got them just because I thought, if I got them, I would get some sort of, really cool, powerful... maybe a 4th stage on the weapon charge for the Buster. Then after I got it, I got the bird. I was like, oh, I get a robotic pigeon.
This was also the first game to introduce weapon tanks. You could get these along with E-tanks to refill weapon energy, which at times that was really helpful.
Yeah. But again, I mean, right now, you're really starting to see, okay, same gameplay, not much is changing. It's another Mega Man game. Okay, come on, let's move on. Let's see what else you can do now that there's a new system out.
And Mega Man 6 was even more so, March 1994.
Before you continue with that's almost inexcusable at this point. I mean, now, 1994, you are well into the Super Nintendo.
At the word of note, Mega Man X, which we'll get to later, is already out.
So, I mean, 1994, you're getting near the end of the Super Nintendo life cycle. PlayStation is lurking. It's... Okay, continue.
But they did introduce some new concepts, fusions with Rush, Jet and Power Man forms with Rush. That was certainly new. They introduced the Energy Balancer, which automatically refilled weapon energy without having to have that weapon equipped. And it would refill whatever's the lowest energy. So that was really helpful at times. There was also alternate pathways through the game in 4 of the stages. And if you found the alternate path using Jet Mega Man or Power Mega Man, you would get the beat parts to make beat. And that was the same as Mega Man 5. It really didn't help that much.
There's also the couple of bosses. I know Tomahawk Man was actually a 2-part. Like, when you get to the end, you actually have to decide whether to go up or down. And if you choose the wrong one, it's when you beat the game. When you beat him, you don't actually get his weapon. You have to redo the level.
Yeah, you'll get the weapon, but you won't get the beat part. So, and those were multiple pathways. 4 Robot Masters had it. Tomahawk Man, Yamato Man, Knight Man, and Centaur Man. So, it basically depended on, do you want to have the beat parts? And that depends on whether or not you actually wanted it. It was the same thing as Mega Man 5. It had its uses, but it really wasn't that necessary. This was also supposedly the last of the Mega Man games because it actually had a distinct ending. At the end of the game, you caught Dr. Wily and you arrested and jailed him. A lot of people thought this was it.
But no, it was not to be.
Yeah, but it was not to be. So, next year and some odd months later, Mega Man 7 comes out. And this is the first Mega Man game on the SNES. It introduced a couple new robots called Bass and Treble. Or is it Bass or Bass?
Bass.
Bass and Treble. Treble is Bass's equivalent of Rush.
We also got Auto, which he made stuff when given bolts. There was a new purchasing system with the bolts.
But the problem with 7 was that it was made after Mega Man X. And Mega Man X was much better received than 7.
One of the biggest problems with 7 was that it was actually only made in 3 months. They only had 3 months to finish, to basically work on Mega Man 7 start to finish. And when you only have that short of a time to make a game, it's gonna be more of the same, and it's gonna be stale, and it's not gonna be that great. A lot of people perceive it as one of the weakest titles in the series, even though they actually had some decent Robot Masters in it. Fuck Burst Man.
And not to mention the fact that, here, Capcom is getting very late to the party. I mean, this is the first. You said this is the first Mega Man game on the Super Nintendo.
Well, this is the first Mega Man game of the original, numbered series. They still had X, and I believe even X2 was out at this time.
Was X2 out?
But even so...
Yeah, it was.
The PlayStation 1 had been released in September of 1995. The Super Nintendo was on its way out.
Yeah, this is Capcom again, being late to the party as they are wanting to do.
I mean, we all know what happens when a new console is released. We do not like to linger around with the old consoles. We want the next ooh shiny, and I could see just on that premise alone why reception could be weak.
Between Mega Man 6 and 7, something of note was, at this point, Capcom was running out of ideas for Robot Masters, and they actually turned to their fans in Japan to come up with ideas for Robot Masters. One of the first ones created by the fans was actually Knight Man in Mega Man 6. And this was kind of a staple sense in 6, 7, 8, and beyond, was fans would hand in ideas, Japanese fans would hand in their ideas for Robot Masters, and if they were good enough, they were actually created to be Robot Masters.
Interesting of Capcom wanting fan input. That's a. I'm sure.
Well, to be fair, you're going through 8. After Mega Man 1 is 8 Robot Masters. You're trying to find like a new interesting weapon upgrade. By Mega Man 6, you've gone through 36 before Mega Man 6, so 42 as of Mega Man. 42 Mega Man Robot Masters as of Mega Man 6. And you're trying to remain fresh and innovative that entire time. Kind of hard to do.
That gets hard. I mean, Centaur Flash was basically a combination of what, Bright Stop and Gravity Hold, and was not as good as either.
Yeah.
But the worst had yet to come. January 1997, we got Mega Man 8.
This is the first Mega Man game not on a Nintendo system. It was mainly produced on the PS1 and the Sega Saturn.
What made Capcom decide to jump ship after being a Nintendo exclusive forever?
I think because of this one part. This was the first game to feature cutscenes and voice acting. Oh dear God, the voice acting.
Well, that's not surprising. Voice acting in video games at that point, 1997, was still a very, very new concept. See Resident Evil 1.
Yeah, and also made by Capcom. Capcom had the...
I also wonder if maybe this was Capcom experimenting a bit, because at this point in time, the X series had proven to be a more successful new flagship for Mega Man than the original Mega Man series. So this may have been Capcom experimenting with seeing how does voice acting and cutscenes work on Mega Man before we implement it or not implement it in Mega Man X.
There was a new character named Duo. He was introduced, and then we never saw him again. But
which is interesting, because Duo introduced the idea of not only sentient alien life, but robotic sentient alien life, which will lead to a whole new level of gameplay, just playing out in space and like on new planets for Mega Man, which could be interesting.
It would have. But what probably the most interesting thing about Mega Man 8, and what really was the driving point for it, was most of the weapon drives that you got had a secondary effect to them, like Thunderclaw, which you got from Clown Man, which tried to kill you by molesting you. You could use it to grapple points and swing around Indiana Jones style. Flash grenades, or flash bombs, I think they were called, blew apart certain sceneries to get bolts to buy things. Every single one had some sort of added effect to the weapon, which I thought was interesting, but it was never brought back in later Mega Mans.
Yeah, and unfortunately, 8 got very average reviews. And probably if it isn't 7, 8 is probably the weakest of the Mega Man games.
Oh, easily. I mean, I beat it once and never touched it again. I could not bring myself around to sit down and play them. And that was the last Mega Man game we saw of the classic series for years and years and years. Not until 2010 that we'll see the revival of the classic Mega Man, but that will be for another time, as we'll start to dive into the series, if not more popular than the classic series, pretty damn close. The X series.
We'll do that in the second half, I believe.
I think we should. So let's take a small break, and when we come back, we'll go into the X series and beyond.
Alrighty, so far so good, guys. We do have plenty more to talk about on our second half. That is going to come up with all the other various stuff right here on this episode of Downloadable Content celebrating Mega Man. We'll be back. welcome back to our second half of Mega Man here on Downloadable Content. We're all still here. Nick and Ron, they're not, they haven't gone off exploring Wily's castle or anything like that.
Mega Man.
Have you seen the worker health complaints about Wily's castle? Trap doors, spike pits, floating laser beams,
And the
death trap in there, I swear.
And the feds haven't sued workers' comp, anything?
No. I think it's probably because of the fact that he kills half of the actual people who try to complain.
Oh, great. Nice. Well, we continue on with the reminiscing and talking about the Mega Man series. We've gotten through most of the classic series. I think in this second half is primarily going to be spent on the X series and, touch on a few others. So, without further ado, I will hand you all back into the gentle, loving care of Nick and Ron. Away you go, guys.
I won't shake you too hard.
Well, much. So, unlike Nick, who came in kind of late in the Mega Man series, I was a fan of the series since 2. So I've already been aware of the games and have been playing them and attempting to beat them for a fair number of years. But with the Mega Man X series, it's a little interesting just with how Capcom decided to go with it. So for the uninitiated, like Brian here, Mega Man X was released in Japan at least, like at the very end of 1993, but it didn't come over to the US till 1994. Capcom wanted to redesign Mega Man for the Super Nintendo to take advantage of the improved hardware and controls. So they introduced a new universe. X, the new robot that looks like a Mega Man called X, it has been designed by Dr. Light in the past, put in suspended animation, and was eventually rediscovered by a new person called Dr. Kane. It's been, the time's a little wonky in how much time has passed, but people say that about 100 or so years between when X was put in suspended animation and when he was freed take place. During that time, society has evolved. Robots have evolved into Reploids, and which is like basically a better functioning version of a robot. And sometimes the robots go what they call maverick in the sense that they become violent and destructive and try to exhibit certain very chaotic elements. And so you have people that are called maverick hunters who go out and try and capture or in some cases kill these maverick robots.
So right from the get-go, it's very interesting how Mega Man X starts out in that this was the first game to actually give an introduction stage where they would just put you in and you go. And there's no stage selection, no nothing. You just start running and shooting. And X has all the powers of Mega Man of old, but as you progress through the game, X receives upgrades from Dr. Light. And a lot of these, well, Dr. Light's hologram, but whatever. But you gain new powers as you go. Like for Mega Man X, you have the ability to dash, you gain armor, you get a new helmet which can headbutt breakable bricks, basically. And you get a new chargeable Mega Buster that can go 2 stages instead of 1, and can give some neat added effects to weapon drives when charged up.
Introduced the idea as well of dashing along the floor for a brief period. Wall sliding is introduced as well. Like wall catching and wall sliding is introduced in this game. It also introduced a whole slew of new characters for us to latch onto. You have the ally Zero, the main antagonist Sigma, like I mentioned, Dr. Kane, the Reploids, the Maverick Hunters, and the robots like that. And there's a lot of the other mainstays from the X series from the Mega Man series carry over. There's the energy tanks. Only now, when you acquire them, they come empty. You have to pick up a loose energy along the way when your life is full for them to get charged.
Yep, good old reserve tanks. Almost Metroid-like.
A little bit, but I think this is probably... I would say it's probably based mostly on the energy tank from the classic series.
Yeah. But it was still an interesting concept.
Oh yeah, certainly. And fan approval and reviewers really loved the game. They liked that there was a new direction for this Mega Man series. And so Capcom's like, well, they like the first one. Let's try and make a second one.
The second one was made around late 1994, early 1995 was when it was localized into the U.S. And it did offer some new concepts. You can rebuild Zero after he blew himself up in the first game. And if you did not get the 3 parts, you actually got to fight Zero in a boss fight.
Which is difficult to do because Zero he's billed as a close range fighter with a light sword. Lightsaber, let's call for what it is, a lightsaber. And that thing hurts like hell.
A lot of people love the concept of Zero and just attached to him and would not stop humping his leg, basically.
Yeah.
When I talk to fans of the X series, the conversation always turns towards Zero and not X, which is very interesting. That that a concept for basically a secondary character has kind of earned almost main character status.
And yeah. And if at least this point in time, Zero, while still viewed as a secondary character, he is billed as like a fairly integral part of the Mega Man X universe. Mega Man 3 came out 1996. You get just to please the fanboys even more, you have the option of playing as Zero throughout the game. Like from the very beginning of the game, of the introductory stage, you get to play as Zero. Now, unlike X, if Zero dies, that's it. You don't get to play as him anymore. Whereas with X, like you have your life, you have your X lives still. X3 was also the last game to be on the SNES, but it was also ported over to the Sega Saturn just because of that was out at the time, and they really weren't sure yet on which system they were going to be going to. Whether it was going to be the Sega Saturn or the PlayStation or the Nintendo 64.
It eventually hit the PlayStation.
Okay, it did eventually hit PlayStation?
It did hit the PlayStation.
Okay. I wasn't sure on that. So, I mean, again, this is... They really aren't... Like, the X series for the Super Nintendo really didn't... After the first game, really hasn't introduced a whole lot. They're just doing the same thing that they've done very well. 8 Robot Masters, getting to the castle of the antagonist, which is Sigma in this case, and going through and killing all the Robot Masters again. And the gameplay is still very fresh because of the more perceived motion in the game compared to like the classic series where it's like kind of run, jump, shoot. Now you're dashing along, sliding along walls, trying to avoid charge shots, things like that. So it's a lot more action oriented while the gameplay is still at that base core of running and jumping and shooting.
Even though Mega Man X3 was initially released on the SNES, at this current point in time, the SNES was on its way out. So you more or less found it on the PlayStation and the Sega Saturn versions. There was also some PC versions that came out. These versions also had animated cutscenes. It had a couple other different things that the Super Nintendo one did not have. But because X3 did so well, SNES copies of this game are extremely hard to find and fetch a very high price.
Oh, so you mean I have like $200 sitting in my back room? Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome anytime.
All right, so this X series did not stop at the Super Nintendo though. Mega Man X4 came out in 1997. This was on the PlayStation, I know for sure. It might have been on Sega Saturn as well. I'm not 100% sure on that. Okay, it was. Okay. This is again, this is kind of taking advantage of the new system. You have upgraded graphics and you have better sprites for the characters. You also have the option right at the outset of playing as X or Zero. And X is a ranged fighter like usual, but Zero is a close-up melee person with a laser sword. As you defeat the robot masters, your boss, the skills you get from them vary depending upon who you're playing as. If you're playing as X, you get your normal robot weapon shot, but if you play as Zero, you gain new moves. Like, I know for one of them, when you input it's similar to the, like, fighting game style of, like, inputting quarter circle forward, laser sword, or what is it, the Shoryuken movement?
Yeah. It's called Dragon Punch.
Yeah, the Dragon Punch movement. Zero would do a particularly move with that energy of that boss's sword infused into his... The energy of that weapon of that boss infused into his sword. So like you do a fire uppercut or a ice spike down.
Just the only problem was they were never translated into English. So you had they were all Japanese. So so like for the air dash it's called Hiankyaku, or the double jump is Kuembu. So it's just like we can't pronounce that. Even I'm having a hard time pronouncing it right now, as it's sitting there right there in front of me.
Yeah. X4, I know. Correct me if I'm wrong, Nick. Was it X4 that had cutscenes and like anime cutscenes, or was it X5?
X4 did have animated cutscenes. The first one to actually have animated cutscenes was actually X3 when it was ported to the Saturn and the PlayStation. But 4 was one that had it regularly. But no voice acting, though. This was all text. Okay,
because I know there's a X, like I can't remember if it's X4, X5, or X6, but they have a cutscene that almost certainly links the classic series to the X series.
I believe that was. I forget which one it was too, but it basically confirms that Zero was created by Dr. Wily. This was brought to light more, I think, in a later X game. I forget which one though.
Yeah. We'll discuss that briefly when we get to the end of the X series. Just the concept of having it introduced to. Of having the classic series be linked to the X series. Mega Man X5 came out in 2000. This game introduced the concept of a quote-unquote time limit in the game. The plot of the game is that there's going to be a space station crashing into the Earth that's going to release a deadly virus that will kill both humans and Reploids. So you're trying to assemble the parts for a gigantic laser beam to shoot the space station down before it enters the atmosphere. And so
is it 16 hours in real time, or
no, it's 16 hours is before the station crashes. After every stage, an hour, you lose an hour.
Oh, okay. So we hadn't gotten into a real countdown clock yet.
Yeah, there's no real countdown.
That could have made it a bit more exciting, I think.
Oh yeah, it feels a bit more. If they had a real countdown clock, it would have been a bit more exciting, just because of the whole like save state of like saving on a memory card. Like, oh, you have 16 hours after you find out about it, and if it's real time, then like maybe after 4 stages, you have like 8 hours left, and you're like, oh shit.
That would have been fun.
Yeah.
Or lose an hour if you ran out of lives. You lose an hour. It's like, oh shh.
Yeah. the capsules are still there in the game. However, there is a capsule in the game that X or Zero can use that unlocks their quote-unquote ultimate armor. So, X could swap between his normal suit and his ultimate armor, but once Zero got the ultimate armor, he couldn't swap. He would stay in the ultimate armor form the entire time, which wasn't necessarily a bad thing because I know Zero with ultimate armor, his armor becomes black instead of red, and he gets a pretty big power boost from the sword. I think he gets some added range to it.
Didn't he also have like a shadow double or something to go along with it?
Yeah, like he would have like a shadow behind him that's like a quarter second behind, and like if you slash, the shadow would slash, and like you both would deal damage.
Moving on, let's see. We have Mega Man X6. I mean, unfortunately, I've not played beyond this point, so I really do not know much except what I have written down here. Zero's what? Presumed dead, but is actually alive.
At the end of 5, it is believed that the quote-unquote canon ending is Zero was forced to launch himself on a shuttle to collide into the space station to stop it from entering the atmosphere, and it's believed that he died during the impact of the shuttle hitting the station. X6 takes place 3 weeks after X5. The space station did break up, but not entirely. So you have large sections of the world on fire, for lack of a better term, and the world's kind of like trying to like put out the fires and get the bodies buried and things like that. The plot point here is that the virus somehow did survive the crash, and now you have to deal with the virus being on the planet. If you defeat a hidden boss called the Zero Nightmare, you unlock the ability to play as Zero.
Gotcha.
This game focused mostly on rescuing other robots to get like energy tanks, even sometimes locations for capsule upgrades for X. This was also the last game to be on the PlayStation 1. Again, this is Capcom being slow to the party, as by this point in time the PS2 has been out.
Yet what surprises me in all of this, and as we're progressing through here, the sheer number of sequels that come out. I mean, Capcom is producing these sequels fast and furious here.
Yeah, I think this is partially due to the gameplay of Mega Man. If you look at Mega Man 1, compare it to Mega Man X6 at this point in time, the gameplay hasn't changed all that much.
I mean, I know that. I mean, games are probably, if you're keeping the same core gameplay, I mean, obviously making a new game isn't going to take a whole lot of time, but I mean, just thinking about our previous episodes of downloadable content with other flagship series, you don't get the kind of quick turnaround like you do with this series. I mean, with the other series like Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat or Resident Evil or whatever, there are years between releases. I mean, just with the Mega Man Classic series and with the X series, Capcom has just banged them out one right after the other.
Yeah.
Well, this isn't just the X series or the Classic series, but every series, every title seems to be pretty bang bang.
Yeah, I think this is partially due to the fan base, just because the fan base really does enjoy the Mega Man games with like that style of gameplay, combined with the fact that the gameplay itself isn't that hard to produce. Capcom produces and they're fairly cheap and can get a quick buck if need be.
So Mega Man's a whore then.
He's a whore with a gun, so he's
yeah. Okay, I can buy that. Mega Man X7 was probably stands out in my mind as one of the most interesting of the series. I have played a little bit of this particular title, mostly because the main X is not initially playable from the get-go. You instead get to play between either Zero or a new character, Axel, which was very interesting. He sounds like he has a constant nasal congestion problem.
Yeah. Mega Man X7 is the first game on the PlayStation 2. It is also the only game to attempt play on a three-dimensional plane, which is fairly new for the... I mean, that's a gigantic shift for the X series. While there were still sections that took place on the 2D plane, and I believe most of the boss fights were on the 2D plane as well, you still would have sections where you shift into the third plane, and that is a very interesting style of Mega Man gameplay.
I'll say, and how did this game fare in terms of fan reaction? I mean, when you're taking a series that has long been entrenched, you said this is the first. This is 2003, so we are 16 years into Mega Man, and this is the first really gigantic shift in the type of gameplay. How did that fare?
Bad.
Not too good, unfortunately. The main complaints was that the having to switch between 2D and 3D at random times without being aware of when the switch was going to occur, it was poorly executed. And also camera doesn't translate well when you switch from 2D to 3D. So you'd have when you switch from the 3D, like you'd have some like errors in terms of like where you thought you were standing.
And even 2D was not that great.
Yeah, that perception in 3D wasn't that good. Like you thought you could make a jump, and turns out you couldn't. Certain things like that. In terms of the playability, X really didn't change a whole lot once you unlock him, or before you reach Sigma's castle. X can fire diagonally though, which is new for him, at least.
I think that was only in the 3D part, though.
Yeah, that's only when you can find it in the 3D part, but that's still new for him. Zero's lightsaber can slice or deflect bullets. Axel is probably the newest addition in terms of like gameplay options. He has the ability to copy certain enemies' appearance, their speed, the weapons they use, and various things like that. Even like how they sound when they jump or when they get hit. So that's an interesting concept for him, at least. I don't know if I don't think it works too well, just because we're so used to the Robot Master like energy type of game that we don't want to play as the Joe Schmo robot that was shooting at us with a rocket 5 seconds ago.
And then finally we have, there's two more games after this in the X series. Mega Man X8, which went back to the strict 2D style of gameplay, but still used 3D graphics. But you now have all three characters, X, Axel, Zero. Each of them have their own unique abilities. Like X can find and equip individual body parts. Axel can fire guns in any direction. Zero can use short-range weapons, like he always does.
Axel's shot, while it's a rapid fire, it isn't a full-screen shot like how X's shot is. Axel also has the ability to hover and glide short distances. He can also stick to a wall whenever he fires his gun. Zero has the ability to double jump right off the bat, which is something that normally you'd have to get an armor upgrade for, or defeat a Robot Master to get that skill. But it's interesting to see Zero be slower than X, because we've always, up to this point in time, seen Zero as a much faster character in terms of how he moves and how he progresses through a stage than X.
But this was the only game that had this. In all other games, Zero is the speed freak.
Yeah.
And you see that when Zero was transitioned into other games as well, not the X series. But that's another discussion.
Yeah. The last game in the X series is called Mega Man X Command Mission. This came out in 2005. Now, compared to the prior games, this is about a 180-degree turn as I can think for gameplay. Instead of it being an action
game.
Yeah, instead of it being an action shooting game, you are now a tactical style turn-based RPG.
Oh, good God. Capcom's getting experimental again.
But it was actually a very interesting game. This is one of the few X games I've actually did sit down and play. And, despite it being a pretty generic RPG that very closely emulated Final Fantasy X, it was quite fun to play, using weapon drives and energy to basically do these super attacks. Every character had a unique style, like Axel could copy bosses, Zero did a whole bunch of sword attacks, Axe, of course, had his X-Buster, but there were other characters as well, such as the big heavy tank Massimo, the healer Cinnamon, who sounds like a 10-year-old girl, and the ninja, what the hell was her name?
I don't remember, sorry.
Yeah, I can't remember, but, there were plenty of other characters to play as well, which made it an interesting game. It certainly wasn't marketed well, and it certainly didn't sell well, but, points to Capcom for trying.
Yeah, and that's the last of the X series. Now, we briefly mentioned that the possibility of the classic series being linked to the X series. What that is I can't remember which game it is. It's 4, 5, or 6. My gut tells me it's 4 or 5, where there's a cutscene where you see Sigma before he becomes the antagonist, as he and his squad are going to explore a recently discovered complex in the mountains, and there we find that Zero's been sealed in this complex the entire time, but he's still under the Dr. Wily kill anything that looks like Mega Man programming. And while Sigma doesn't look anything remotely like X, he gives off the same energy signature as X. So Zero obviously complies with the programming and goes kill, kill, kill. Sigma fights him off and is able to subdue him, and then essentially lead him back to their base for study and possibly rehabilitation.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know that much. Only that Zero was indeed, and again, this was confirmed in a later X game, or was in a remake or something. But it was confirmed that Zero was in fact a bot made by Dr. Wily, which directly ties the two series together. And supposedly we're supposed to get more info on this, but Capcom has not said anything since, so we're still waiting on that.
Yeah. So that's it for the X series. Now, at this point in time, you really won't see a console release of Mega Man for 5 years, which for Mega Man is a lifetime.
But as far as the actual main Mega Man goes, we have to wait all the way till 2008, when finally Capcom listened to the growing fan base of, we want a proper Mega Man game, give us a proper Mega Man game, and we got it in Mega Man 9, finally the revival of the classic series. And this was classic in every sense of the word, as even the graphical style went back to a 8-bit format, and it was only for download on the 3 networks: Xbox Live, Nintendo WiiWare, and PlayStation Network. Mega Man 9 was released here in the States on September 22nd, 2008. And it was a great day indeed. It brought back all the difficulty. Sliding was gone and the charge shot was gone. but many of the old school difficulty came back, and it still offered some firsts in the series, such as the first woman robot master, Splash Woman.
Which is which plays a little bit of sexism because no other robot in the series, to my knowledge, has a weakness to the Mega Buster. Like when you shoot her, you deal 2 or 3 damage to her compared to most robot masters where you only deal 1 or 2 damage.
Yeah, well, all the robot masters, had a fixed amount of damage they took from the Mega Buster. It fluctuated from game to game, but in this one, yes, she did take 2 shots from 2 points of damage from the Mega Buster, as opposed to all the other masters, which only took 1. So she was the one you started with, so there was a bit of a we're representing women in video games, but
yeah, well. I mean, as you said, it came out, in 2008, and also keep in mind what was going on at that time. We were having this retro revival, so to speak, in video games. Games were coming out that were callbacks to the old style of play. I mean, you had not just Mega Man, but you also had, like, Donkey Kong Country Returns, New Super Mario Brothers, the new Mortal Kombat game, all of these games, being made in the 2D style of their original counterparts. So, it was right in that time, and I'm sure, and Mega Man was no different. It cashed in.
And not only that, it had downloadable content as well, including a hard mode and a super hard mode, which, if you want to see a grown man cry, make him play that mode.
Yeah. It has the option of an NES slowness emulator, where like it'll actually emulate the processing power of the NES and slow down during the appropriate moments. It also introduced, although this was DLC, it introduced the option of playing as Proto Man for the very first time.
Which he was able to slide, charge up his Mega Buster, he could deflect shots with his shield, but he took twice as much damage and took twice as much knockback. Which, that did screw you over, frickin' Pits.
A lot.
Yeah. But this would return in the... because Mega Man 9 made so much money, we obviously got another classic game, Mega Man 10. For the same systems, it was released on March 1st, 2010. And this Proto Man was playable right from the get-go. And then later on, we got Bass as a playable character as well. This one was not as popular as Mega Man 9. Mega Man 10 did offer the first game to offer an easy mode, which many of us complained about because Mega Man is not known to be easy.
To give an idea of what easy mode is, Brian, there's certain screenshots that illustrate this where normal game mode, say for example you're looking at a pit of spikes, and you gotta have to jump over it or do a disappearing block puzzle to get across it. In easy mode, there's just a platform covering the spikes over that you just walk over and just go on with your day.
Okay, let me put it into perspective of how easy mode is. I nearly got the achievement for never taking a hit in the game. I almost got that achievement.
Yeah, that's kind of easy.
Yeah, easy is a bit of an understatement. The game gifts you all these, just before every boss fight, there's this little thing on the ground. When you pick it up, all of your weapon energy is refilled. And your health.
Oh, wow.
It's just... It's honestly an insult. Whereas hard mode actually kicked your ass. And kicked your ass hard. Another thing that they did have, and we didn't really talk about them, but they were downloadable content with the Mega Man killers from the Game Boy Mega Man games. Punk, Anchor, and Galad, I think his name is, or Ballad. I never remember them.
Ballad.
Thank you. But they were there as well, which was a nice nod to the old school.
Yeah. But, I mean, other than that, I mean, like, that's it for, like, the core series. So, I'm curious, Nick, to hear, like, what your memories of Mega Man are. Like, what do you like about it? What do you want to see carry over? What do you want to see them improve on?
I'm very upset that it's now that the series creator Kenji Inafui, I believe I'm bad with Japanese, but ever since the creator has left Capcom, it's really starting to look like we'll never see another Mega Man game again, which upsets me.
Well, why do you say that? Why do you think Capcom is done with Mega Man?
Well, I say this from a few things. Is Mega Man Legends 3 was canceled.
Mega Man MMO was canceled.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. What'd you say?
They were gonna make an MMO of Mega Man and then canceled it.
In Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, what we thought X would be in the game, he never made it. It was just 0 and that's it.
And also, as a side note, just to really piss off the fanboys, one of the DLC content for 0 is they have him wear X armor.
Yeah, but that's... I'm sorry, that's not X.
Yeah, but when first screenshots were released, we thought it was X being added. Turns out it was just an armor skin for 0 that really pissed off people.
And I guess if the Mega Man series ever did continue, is I would really would like them to get more input from the fans. I know they've been doing it for the last few Mega Man games now, even 9 and 10, but Sheep Man, really? I just think that, yeah, I mean, I know we've come up with a lot of ideas for different Robot Masters, but I don't know, I think we could have done better. And I think they should get input from the American base as well. I think we can have some really good ideas for Robot Masters should a Mega Man 11 ever be made.
Yeah.
But really, I would just I'm perfectly content to just see more of the same. The series just doesn't get old for me. I love the difficulty. I love the challenge that Mega Man offers. And, they keep cranking them out, even as, $10 download titles. I'll keep buying them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Probably one of the things that also, like, Brian mentioned this briefly in the beginning, I just want to reemphasize it. Some of the stage music for these games is really good and has been featured in various, like, orchestral scores in Japan.
And, that's always been one of the defining moments. I did touch about this earlier, was, just how great the music was. If you just go on YouTube sometime and just go check out even Mega Man 9 and 10, there's just, remasters and arrangements of these songs just all over the place. Just look it up sometime. Just do a quick search. You'll be amazed.
Yeah.
It's always been the series' strong point.
Yeah. Other than gameplay, like, the music has been the other main strong point of it. So, I mean, like, that's all that I have. Brian, do you have anything else you want to, like, any questions you got?
Not really. I mean, I'm just, for a series that, that has spanned 25 years, there have been a lot of games. I mean, I think Mega Man has been featured in some form or another, I think in over 300 video games. It has just been impressive, the sheer amount of games that Mega Man has been in. And, you'd think that with the amount of games in a franchise like that Mega Man would have been, people would have gotten so sick of him.
At this point in time, I'm looking at the Wikipedia page. If you include that every single Mega Man game that has been made at this point that has the name Mega Man in it, there's over 50 games.
Yeah, and that's just with the name Mega Man in them. But you look beyond that of where he just made an appearance, and the list skyrockets. And that's not to mention ports and carryovers, and he is everywhere. And clearly he's more popular in Japan than he is here in the Americas, which is kind of upsetting. But and that's why I say he for just starting out as a little quick game in 1987 that wasn't advertised well, that was not marketed well. The game survived and was made into this huge big series because fans like us appreciated the game and spread it through word of mouth. This was one of the first game series that really thrived by the fact that how it did well was not like Dragon Warrior, where it was pushed on Nintendo Power till no end, or Final Fantasy, but it survived on just strict word of mouth.
Yeah, this is before the age of the internet too, so this definitely it shows just the power that the gaming community has, even though we aren't aware of it too often.
So that's basically 25 years in. I mean, will we see another Mega Man game? Who knows?
I really
Probably,
hope so.
if Capcom likes money.
And then that's just the big thing. It wouldn't take them that long to make a Mega Man game.
Right
6 months?
Right now, I think they're focusing all of their attention on Resident Evil 6. So,
well, X and Zero are going to appear in the upcoming video game, the sequel to Namco Cross Capcom, Project X Zone for the 3DS. And Brian, if you have not seen the trailer for this might convince you to get a 3DS, because this game looks amazing.
Good. Well, I think you two have done a wonderful job going through the Mega Man series, so well done, both of you. If you have any more final thoughts on the series, say so now. If not, I will put this one to bed.
I think I'm set to go, Ron.
Yeah, I'm ready to go. We can teleport out of here to the next stage.
Yes, you can. Alrighty, so if you have any questions, comments, whatever on this episode or any other episode of downloadable content, feel free to get in touch with us. Even also, if you want in on a future recording of downloadable content, feel free to get a hold of us at either our Facebook or Twitter. Facebook at facebook.com/downloadablecontent, or on Twitter at DLContent. So it remains for me to thank Nick and Ron for this episode.
No problem. Thanks for having us on.
Yep, thanks for having us.
All right, Ron, I'll put you back in the closet until the next episode. And so, I'm Brian. We'll see you next time.